Hello and welcome to another Friday night live chat. Tonight I have an indie author. Oh yeah, by the way, thanks for being here, everybody. I really appreciate it. I'm loving having these chats with authors. The Monday Night Book Club is going great now that I have guests on and the author of the book, which I didn't know how that was going to turn out, but it's been really fun having the author on because you can ask questions directly to her as you're talking about her book. So that's cool. But tonight, one of the guests on that book club, Sarah Kirk Pierzchala, forgive me if I mispronounced her name, she's coming on tonight to talk about her book. She's also a writer. She's got as far as I can tell, a 5-book series. I think she's written other things as well, but she's got a 5-book series called Beyond Cascadia, which is like a reference to the Pacific Northwest. So without further ado, actually, let me give a quick rundown. I'm just going to read her Amazon author bio real quick for you so you get a general idea who she is. S. Kirk Pierzchala, a lifelong resident of the Pacific Northwest, is no stranger to moss and damp. She has spent decades crafting fine art, weaving stories, and creating children. Her acclaimed short stories and nonfiction essays have appeared in both regional and national publications. The Beyond Cascadia series showcases her love for the Northwest and her concerns about mankind's future, as well as her drive to tell stories that resonate with relatable themes that are both intimate and universal. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring her on in. Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's great. Going great. Can you believe this weather?
Oh my gosh. Like every summer we go and get like those splash pads at Costco. It's like the big ring and then it sprays the water out on the outer ring. Because they usually get tore up by the kids, so we just they're like $25. But my daughter and my son have been out playing in it today. And we get the
wonderful.
bubble guns out. So yeah, it's been a good day. Although it's getting hot in my garage. I film in my garage, so I'm sweating right now. I need to get like a cool little studio. Did you have the day off? Did you do anything cool today to enjoy the weather?
Oh, it took me most of the day to get our minivan cleaned out and cleaned off because there was so much pollen stuck on it.
Yeah.
It was just, we don't have a garage, so it sits under the trees. And it's just, I'm thinking of contacting NASA to see if they have looked into using pollen as some sort of a matrix to terraform Mars because it's so hardy, and once it gets stuck, just other stuff starts growing on it, moss, lichen,
Yeah.
everything. It's amazing, and it's horrible. And even going through the car wash, well, I rinsed it ahead of time, took it to the car wash, came back and saw this stuff still stuck on it, so I still had to clean it off.
Yeah, I got only one side. So we just got a minivan because we have 3 kids now. But I also have a Yaris for a little gas saver, and like just the passenger side has got like moss growing on it. And I'm like I'm like embarrassed to take my kids to school and that. We usually take the minivan anyway, but for some reason, if we end up taking the Yaris, so we always forget about it because we rarely use it. So the times we do take it, it's like this is disgusting, and I'm embarrassed to drive it. Odd you should mention. I just saw something about Mars that scientists are thinking about throwing a meteor from some belt. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not at it to like terraform it, and that
too.
sounds awesome. Says talking to authors is overrated. I don't think so. I'm having a good time. Like the first book I did on my book club, I didn't have anybody to bounce things off of, so it was a little boring. But yeah, I've been enjoying having you and Blake and Rebecca on there. It's been a good time.
Yeah, it is fun.
But let's talk about your book. So Beyond Cascadia, I just kind of read a little bit on Amazon. Is it like a dystopia? I guess I'll just open up to you, kind of explain what the series is. It's a 5-book series, as far as I can tell. You want to just kind of explain what it is?
I've got 7. It'll wrap up in 7, and
Okay.
book 6. The draft is finished, and it came in. It's at 94,000 words, so it'll probably be the shortest of all of them, between 350, 375 pages.
What are the other ones? Normal average length about?
They're in the 400s. This one's 484. This one, book 2, is really long because it's almost like 2 books in one, because I had like co-protagonists doing their own thing, but intersecting often enough that I could separate it into 2 books.
Yeah.
And then everything all comes together at the end. So it's hefty. That might throw some people off, but
I just break those up.
Really like it. They really like getting lost in the story.
Yeah, I usually with like books that are, cause I usually like my preferred range is like, I don't know, 100 to 200,000 words. So like if it gets bigger than that into like the 600, 700 page range, I usually like read half of it, and then I'll go read like a normal size book that I'm used to, and then I'll go back to the big book, finish it off.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like my brain is like, I haven't finished this book. I should be finished with the book. I need to do, I don't know, there's like this weird completionist OCD thing that I have, or ADHD, I don't know. I was like, I have to do something that I can start and finish. So I stop that, I go do something I can knock out fast, and I come back to the big book.
Well, at least you come back. That's good.
Yeah.
So this series is, it's more like a techno thriller with political overtones to it, and a psychological thriller. So it has like dystopian and cyberpunk elements to it. It's not post-apocalyptic, although the Cascadia that this is all beyond was actually like I'm projecting that the big earthquake that they're always telling us is going to happen has happened, and that sort of had a cultural impact in making the Northwest kind of even more insular in a way. They were kind of cut off a bit from the rest of the country, and that kind of gave rise to a little bit more power for the progressives, because as I was researching this, by book 4 there is an actual split, not a civil war, but there's a split. And I'm sure you were aware that here in Oregon there's a big talk about, we've got to join Idaho, the greater Idaho movement, the eastern part of Oregon. Hey, let's just break off and join Idaho. Actually, the statistics that I could find were showing that it's the sort of the blue voters, the blue part of Oregon, that would rather break off and join with Washington and California.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed during the COVID and the lockdown, all 3 governors were like in lockstep.
Oh yeah.
Anytime they actually signed a little pact. Anytime one implemented some draconian draconian made up rule, the others would follow suit. So I was actually working on something very similar for my picture for where this series was going to go as that was happening. So I was really there were times as I was working on the first 2 and 3 especially, and then 4, that it seemed like I couldn't keep up with some of the things that were happening. Like I projected all this stuff happening like 50 years in the future, and then all of a sudden I'm living through it.
Yeah.
So I had to
That's
do
the thing.
some juggling to explain things, explain the timeline.
The past few years have been stranger than fiction, and like it's to the point where real life just seems like a parody. So I can't tell, is this a story or just like a B article? I can't tell.
Yeah, exactly. You can't outdo it, and even with the technical things that are coming up with the inventions, and where you see different things going, like with bioengineering and implants and all of this stuff, it's like, well, it's all happening, and we don't seem to have learned anything from all of the science. Well, like Jurassic Park now with wolves.
Oh, the dire wolves. I was like, what's the purpose of this? What are you going to do with these animals?
I don't know, but they just look like white wolves to me.
Yeah.
I mean, they're cute, but I don't know.
What are they, like a little bit?
I think it's a big publicity stunt.
Yeah. I don't really get the purpose of bringing animals back that were extinct. I mean, I guess maybe humans had something to do with dire wolves. I don't know the history of that, but
I don't know.
They don't seem like they belong here anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to deal with man.
Not anywhere near cattle or sheep, that's for sure.
I know, it's like farmers and ranchers have enough issues with regular wolves, and you're gonna like, here, let's put some wolves on steroids into the mix, and probably label them as protected, so you can't do anything against them.
Well, if they've got like maybe patented or something, I don't know.
I was thinking
maybe
just
have like
sell it to the military
compared to regular wolves.
Yeah, right. Probably. I think the military should buy it and go send them into war. There'd be some battle dogs.
Yeah, give him some sort of cybernetic upgrade.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
So it's what year exactly does your stories take place in?
Well, the first one is 2071.
Okay.
Although I don't have like a banner at the beginning of each chapter giving the date and time. You can sort of figure it out from references, and then in book 2, the presidential election for that year figures prominently. So there's all these wonderful tools online for predicting eclipses and giving you the date of elections and Christmas 50, 75, 80 years in the future.
Yeah.
It's really handy. So when there's something like that sort of anchors the timeline, it's mentioned, but I don't break it down. Oh, and then this year this happened, and then this year that happened. It's a little bit more general.
That's cool. I never would have thought about like looking that kind of stuff up though. That's interesting. So that's weird that you say 20. So is that like a significant number that I'm just not aware of, like in sci-fi, or because I literally just read a book like Bad Dog, and it took place in 2071.
I think for me, I ended up with that date because I was trying to pick a date that was far enough in the future that I wouldn't live to see anything like this happening, and far enough in the future that other people wouldn't be alive to say, "Oh, she got it wrong." And far enough that there could be some geopolitical developments and shaking up and realignments and technological advancements, space exploration advancements that were plausible, but also close enough to our time that things like slang and kind of cultural forces and the way people were living was still recognizable and relatable.
Yeah.
So it's not like super advanced, exciting space opera where everybody's in these really fantastic costumes and we don't ask too much about how things work and you can just zip around and do this, that. It's not like that. So it's just kind of taking now and projecting it a few decades into the future.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't read I can't say I don't know if I've actually read a thriller. So is it like most things I read are like mil sci-fi or mil fantasy or just fantasy. So there's a lot of action. Is it action heavy or is it just kind of light on action? Is it mostly like more leaning into like intrigue? and
I would
mystery.
say it leads more towards intrigue, and when I do have like action or violence, I want it to really kind of pop.
Yeah, it's like a
I,
murder or
I
something.
don't I don't read a lot of the books where there's constant action and constant battles, constant fighting, because after a while, to me, I don't watch those kinds of movies either. To me, it doesn't. After a while, it's just not working anymore.
Yeah,
But I do love things like, and I'm not comparing myself to Vince Gilligan, but I really admire his writing in Breaking Bad,
hmm
in that it is character centric, and then you have all these threads of these things that are happening, and intrigue and double crossing and so forth. But then when there is something that's violent, it really stands out, and you're like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
that really is horrible.
Well, it's like it's like dreadful, and it's like it has a heavy impact. It's not like crazy over the top action, but the things that happen are like, whether they're super violent or whatever. So yeah, I get what you're saying. That's yeah, I'm gonna have to pick it up because I was reading yours, and I don't really know how to pronounce the main character's last name. Was it? How do you say it?
Which
Is that I think?
McIntyre?
Oh, is that what it said? I thought it said. Let me look at it. Oh, I thought that was an L. Okay, I'm silly goose. Never mind. I was like McIntyre.
It's a pretty common name.
Oh, Owen McIntyre. Well, that's embarrassing for me. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems pretty cool. I think it's definitely gonna be on my TBR to check out. Maybe as my first thriller.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I liked working on the relationships between the characters and how their decisions lead to certain things, but also how they react to.
Even in the stories that I read that have like a lot of action, like there's some chapters that it's just nothing really happens except there's just character development. So I think
That's good for breathing.
Yeah.
Those are kind of like breathing chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's important.
so tell me a little about like what is the premise? So like what is Owen like? What happens to him? Where does he start out? Like what's kind of without spoilers, I guess, but like what kind of a journey does this guy go on?
Okay, so he's kind of I wanted him to be like not a blank slate, but he's what they would call a nun, None, as in he's kind of an agnostic, and he's a product of this worn out, semi-progressive atmosphere here in the Northwest. He was not raised religiously, and his parents are divorced, and they were just kind of selfish jerks. But his grandfather was really influential in his life. So his grandfather was closer to him than his parents. And that kind of ties in with this whole kind of like it's a conspiracy of a whole organization that is attempting to undo the surveillance state that has been coming about throughout the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's these factors at work, and he, not so much in this first adventure, he does get sucked into it through there's a narco terror plot that he ends up investigating because China is like, okay, this is our chance to finally take down what's left of the United States and get our people in positions of power, and we'll have total control through their politicians by causing chaos. So hints of this have come out, and so his supervisor at the agency, which was like, I combined like state police and National Guard kind of thing, and made this new agency that's in charge on the West Coast. He gets sent to investigate that, and it kind of gets in over his head because he's more of like a cyber IT guy.
Yeah.
But his supervisor wanted him in the field for security reasons because he didn't want like stuff being sent back and forth on the internet because it's unreliable, plus it could be hacked and all that. So he gets caught up in that and gets to know these brothers who are from Colombia, but they're also half Chinese. So they have ties with the big corporations on both sides of the Pacific. And there's a lot of state issued drug use to sort of keep people under control because the government doesn't know what to do with them because the economy's a mess. And it's just like, well, it's just easier to drug them. And I'm basing a lot of that what I see on the streets of Portland.
Yeah.
as I was working on this, I was thinking, well, is this too much to just say this many people are just living out on the streets doing drugs and nobody cares, and the government is just sort of helping them to live like that? And it's like, oh yeah,
Yeah. When did you start
I see
writing
that
this?
every single time I drive into, and I work with a Catholic ministry that goes out and it not exactly preaches, but we're just kind of give comfort to the homeless.
Mm-hmm.
So, I see that all the time. So that that was a life experience that I was able to work into. Um, so anyway, as Owen gets more and more wrapped up in this situation with the brothers, he kind of gets stuck between their family situation, which is a lot of, it's very dysfunctional and unhealthy. Um, and then the rest of the story is what plays out between those three men. And actually a fourth one, which I can't say anymore because I don't want spoilers.
Yeah. When did you start right? Because this, like, with the whole, like, China, trying to sow chaos and putting their own politicians into our government to kind of control us by proxy. When did you start writing this? Were you prophetic, or did you just kind of, were you inspired by the events going on in America?
Well, I was raised in a pretty conservative household that paid a lot of attention to what was happening, with politics and also the big trends. And I've read some history and so forth. So for me, what I understand about the relationships between uh, the Chinese mindset and how they have like really, really long term goals, and as does communism in particular. I mean, they don't expect to live to see their goals,
Mm-hmm.
whereas we in the United States have become kind of, it's like there isn't any future beyond the next 15 minutes, and if we don't get our own way, and I'm talking about the citizens so much, not the politicians. So I've always just been kind of aware of those uh, factors at play. So when it came time to build up this world, those were kind of the obvious players, and that's where those pieces went.
Yeah. And then was that before 2020 kicked off?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is, I actually had a different version of this done ages ago. I mean, ages ago, and when I was the first version, I was working. Well, not the first, second, third. I mean, I've been picking away at this for a long time in between, kids and so forth. Um, I had Islam was a bigger player because it was shortly after uh, 9/11 actually.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's still a player in the book in that it's got a cultural effect in the United States. I've said that there's a lot more refugees or immigrants, and then children of immigrants, and then the influence of people converting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a factor in the story too. Um, but when I worked on this version, I took it up again and I started rewriting in 2019. It was China seemed like the obvious adversary in this version of the story.
Yeah. So it sounds like kind of your life experience, your life knowledge, things you learn about history and geopolitics, is kind of inspirational. Is there anything else that kind of like inspired this idea, or where the concept of this series came from?
Well, growing up, one of my favorite, well, two of my favorite things were the film Blade Runner and the book Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. So it's not like I set out to do, I'm going to take bits and pieces deliberately take bits and pieces of this, but those, as you go through life, everything that you consume is in your subconscious,
Yeah.
and then resonate. And so there is a bioengineering factor throughout this entire series. And then there's also just humanity and the question of evil, and why are people evil, and how does a real change of heart come about? And so that would be like the Dostoevsky influence. I'm not that dark and heavy, but those kinds of themes are important to me, and I don't think I could write anything that didn't have some kind of or at least ask those questions or have them present, even if it's not answering them.
Yeah. Yeah, I like a good story that's like a change of heart, maybe for a villain. I don't necessarily like it when villains are made sympathetic, like justifying things they've done, but I do like it when
Mm-hmm.
they are, when I guess they can change, or because it's usually, if it's done well, it's usually interesting to see like how they went from being the villain to something else, or at least feeling remorseful. I don't know, but yeah. So you said this is going to be a 7-book series. Do you have any other plans once you're done with that? Any other ideas cooking?
Um, Actually, yeah. Well, I do short stories all along. I do have a collection of short stories out there that some of them are published in like Silence and Star Song and other like indie magazines. So I'm always working on short pieces because I love um, being able to commit to an idea that, but not a whole novel,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and to practice just keep honing my prose. So I do those, but um, I have like a trilogy sort of sketched out that would be sort of, I don't know that I would say it was young adult, but it's just very, it would take place in different segments of time. There would be sort of an arc, a little bit maybe like, I don't want to say the space trilogy, C.S. Lewis's space trilogy, but it would have some elements of that in it. Um, I've got those sketched out. Whether or not I'm that interested in returning to them, I don't know. I have an idea for a standalone fantasy novel.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I feel
and
like you
then
don't
like
see
every
that. People always try
day
to pitch
there's,
series, but I do like a good standalone novel.
yeah, it depends on if I live. No. um, and then every day, there's some new thing, like with the bombarding Mars with an asteroid. I mean, there's always these cool things that are everywhere, and you're like, oh wow, that would be fun to write a story about.
Yeah.
So
That's the first thing I was like, man, that'd be a really cool story to like just have this like spacefaring civilization go out when they see a planet. Like, it's close, but we need to do some work to it and just start throwing meteors at it.
and then pollen, and then
Yeah.
lichen.
And then Paul. Yeah. Now it's perfect for habitation. Let's see here. Do you any chances? Have you been in the talks with anybody? Maybe getting something adapted for like a show or anything like that?
Nope.
Nothing like that.
I have. Well, okay, actually, full disclosure, for a previous version of the first book, I wrote my own screenplay, and it was really cool because this was a while ago, and my husband wrote a program for me because I showed him. It's like, this is what a screenplay is supposed to look like. It has to match this, otherwise, they throw it out. It has to be this kind of font. It has to have everything has to be spread out exactly formatted like this. And he's like, okay. And he wrote this program, and it was wonderful. It worked great. So I wrote the screenplay, and my sister was living in Silver Lake outside Los Angeles at the time, and I think her roommate worked at the Sci-Fi Channel or something. So I
Awesome
sent
place
her
to
a
work.
copy. She gave it to him, and the feedback was, wow, this is better than anything we're doing. And that was the last I heard. So,
Yeah, I hear it's
so
quite a.
that's as close as I've gotten.
Yeah, I hear it's a pretty big ordeal to try and actually get all the way from
Yeah,
like even if you get a meeting with somebody, that doesn't mean anything. Is what I've
yeah.
heard. Uh,
So I mean, if people were to beat, my door down offering me to do that, that'd be great. But I'm not seeking it out. I can't put the time into that. I just want to write the books. But I am adapting book one as a graphic novel because I'm also a fine artist. So
Awesome. I was just, yeah. Hammertron in the chat just asked, do you draw pictures of characters or places that you imagine for your stories?
I do, and they're going in the graphic novel.
Awesome. Do you have like a Kickstarter for that already, or are you still kind of in the early
No,
stages?
I don't work well under that kind of pressure. So I would rather, what I'm thinking I'm going to do, and I'm going to talk to some other people I know in the comic scene once I'm farther along, is basically when it's done, then maybe do a Kickstarter to go ahead, pay for the printing or whatever, because then I don't have to worry about meeting a deadline or fulfilling it. Because I hear all these horror stories of artists that go out there and say, hey, I'm going to do blah, blah, blah by such and such, and something happens and they can't do it, and you get all of these complaints.
Yeah. You see that, and not just with like, graphic novels, but like video game devs that try to go indie, all kinds of stuff, filmmakers. That's a big issue.
Yeah. So I would rather have the product done so that I can fulfill right away and then not worry about any kind of weird hiccups.
Yeah. So you're obviously going to be drawing it, sounds like. Are you going to be inking it and coloring it and lettering it as well?
Well, I'm thinking that it will probably be black and white.
Oh, okay.
Because I
like black and white comics personally.
Yeah, they do. I mean, my greatest strength is my quality of line. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna play that up. I like the Vagabond manga.
I've heard of the name. I've never read it.
Okay, so this is it's based on the story of Musashi, the samurai, and this is Takahiko Inoue is the artist, and they're black and white, and they're really good.
Yeah,
I love this. Now mine's not going to look quite like that because it's my own style, but if I can do something like that, I'm going to be really, really happy. And the proof concept pages that I've done so far have turned out great. Now the thing is, it turns out that there are programs where you can just add your frames and add for each panel different shapes and all your thought bubbles and your speech bubbles and all your little special effects sounds and stuff. They're already there. All you have to do is put them in, pick a font for your dialogue, and then you have to worry about lettering.
Yeah.
So I'm doing most of the work with the scripts written is going into the penciling and the inking with actual ink. My pencils and my pens are all from Japan. I love them. They're really good.
Nice.
So that's what I'm doing. Now on my website, I do have some sketches on I have a page with the graphic novel, and then I do have most of the art that's there now is just AI stuff that I threw together for book trailers. So that's not my art. That's just advertising.
Yeah.
But the graphic novel is going to be my art.
That I'm excited for that. That sounds really cool. Have you spent some time in Japan? You sound like you're a pretty big fan of the culture.
No, I have not. But I really, really love the Studio Ghibli and the Miyazaki stories. With my 5 kids, he was basically as big as Disney in our household. So I love his art. I love his storytelling, as weird as it is. It's just, and the music, they're just wonderful. So it was the inspiration from Studio Ghibli that got my kids into other different anime and manga. And it was actually my daughter's idea. After she read that, she's like, hey, Mom, you should do a graphic novel. And I'm like, okay, you gonna help me? And she's like, yeah, sure. And then she ditches me, and I've already put this work into it. It's like, well, I'm committed to this. I'm gonna do it. But she's off reading Berserk and whatever. So they know actually way more about that than I do. Now, I've got a friend who lives in Japan part of the time, in the U.S. That's like half the year each way, and he's married to a Japanese woman. So that's my connection, because he's like, I don't know what you would call a Japanophile or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he's our go-to person for history, and because he knows so much, and he is actually writing. He's going to have a book out. I shouldn't talk about what it is, but secret. So that's a connection, and we're welcome to go and visit anytime we want. And now that I have a passport, who knows? It may happen.
Yeah, I love Japan. So I went there quite a few times in the Navy, and my goodness, it's such a great country. I actually got, you might like this. This is it's hard to get it. it's like a.
Uh,
So they painted it on. He painted it with like a paintbrush and ink, and then he took a bamboo stick and stuck it into my arm. That
wow.
was a really cool experience. So
Did it hurt?
honestly, it hurt less than regular tattoo. Like all my other, I'm fairly inked up. It wasn't bad at all
Wow.
compared to like a regular tattoo gun.
So did you go to the same port each time, or did you get to travel around, or?
So I was an air crewman, so I was like on a Boeing 737. So I did 6 years in the Navy,
Oh, okay.
never stepped foot on a ship. Our air base was in Atsugi, Japan, and we take it was like a half-hour trip to Yokohama. It might take us like an hour to get to like Shibuya, Tokyo area. We went to Mount Fuji one time. That was like a whole day trip though. That was awesome. Very tiring. But yeah, we go to like Yokohama was a fun city because it's like a quick half-hour train ride, and it's tons of stuff to do in Yokohama. But Shibuya and Tokyo obviously are still great to go hit up and check them out. I don't know, loved it. Food was great.
Well, I hope to go someday.
Yeah, definitely recommend. 10 out of 10. Hammertron Action Figures wants to know how many words do you typically write each day if you have like an average or anything like that.
I try to do at least 1,000 a day.
That's a good goal.
And if I tune out distractions, it's actually not that hard, and I'll go like I can do 1,500. Something that I do when I sometimes I'll have flare-ups of carpal tunnel, and it's hard to type.
Yeah.
Or if I just have like a mental block and just can't do a scene, I'll dictate. I've got an app on my phone, so I'll just tell myself, describe the scene, start writing a chapter, but I'm just speaking it, and that I can then clean up. I'll just put it into Chat GPT and say, format this, add punctuation, but don't change anything. And it does. Well, sometimes it'll change a word, but I'll go back and put it back in my word. So
Yeah.
It's not generating anything. It's just formatting and cleaning up. And then I put it into my main document and clean up further. But that's usually still a rough draft.
Yeah.
But that's a great way to get, it can do like 500 words easily that way. And then when I go back on a revision, I've got that to work with, and it's like, oh, okay, keep going. And then you get, most of my chapters are probably around 1,500, 1,200, 1,500.
Yeah.
Some are longer, few are shorter, but that's about the range.
When you're doing like that 1,000 to 1,500 in a day typing, are you just like plowing through and then you go back and see like grammar errors or that doesn't make sense, or do you kind of like edit as you go?
Well, I should just plow through and then edit later. But I'm like, it's like when a vampire and you throw a handful of rice in front of them and they have to stop and count them. And I always told my kids, when I homeschooled, when they're writing something, it's like, don't worry about the spelling, don't worry about we'll fix all that later, just write. But I don't take that advice, but I should.
I totally understand. I give advice to my kids all the time that I do not follow.
So I have Grammarly on my computer now, and I can see, little underline red for misspelling and then blue for, you need to completely rewrite this part. So as I'll be going along, it's like, okay, I can see how much red and how much blue I've got here, but I'll fix that later. So I'm getting a bit better at just typing like really, really fast and then going back and going, good Lord, I made so many mistakes. Yeah. I thought I knew how to spell that word, but I guess I didn't.
I do. Yeah, I feel like I spell worse when I write with my hand by pencil than I do typing. I don't know why that is, but I think it's because the Navy messed me up. Because like when you join, or I don't know if it's like in every branch or not, but the military will say like you have to write in all capitals so that it's more legible and it's easier for people to read. Like when you write things like in a watch log or whatever. So like I got incredibly used to writing all caps, and now my writing is like half and half, and it looks ridiculous. And my brain's like I'm trying to revert back to being civil. I got out in 2019, and I still write funny by hand now. I can't help it.
You can retrain your handwriting if you really want to.
Yeah, I type. I usually just type if I'm going to do any writing, so I rarely write by hand. Which maybe I should, because that's one of those things I feel like that eventually one of those arts or whatever. Not that's an art, but I mean, I guess that might disappear.
Well, it's actually really good for your brain to switch between those different modes of either dictating or handwriting or typing, uh, instead of just going.
Yeah.
You're using all of your hands or almost all of your hands and your brain in different ways, and that's really good for your brain.
I'm gonna have to try dictating. That sounds interesting. I've never done that. I feel like I've done I've DM'd before, like for Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm not great at like that part. Like I'm good at planning and writing all things together, and then when it comes time to actually talk and like guide everybody through it, I'm not as great at that. So maybe maybe that'd be good practice.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, because it helps if you think I mean, I'm just going to tell this story as if there's somebody sitting there listening, and then you just start telling. And of course, it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And you're going to mess up your tenses or whatever, but it really gives you something solid to work from.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it. I'm definitely gonna have to give that a shot. So yeah, I guess next question is, how did you become a writer? Where did you get started with all this?
Well, I just remember when I was really, really young, I was just writing something and I was excited about it, and my mom was really encouraging. She's like, "Oh yeah, that's really good. You could be a writer." So, and I loved. Well, I was homeschooled also, so I was probably the oldest homeschool person you'll ever meet because my parents started it. It was not legal here in Oregon, but
Really?
they did it anyway.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's how old I am. I just loved reading. I don't remember learning to read. I could always read and write. So I was very much about reading books and reading fiction and Narnia books and Lord of the Rings and just coming up with my own weird little adventures and so forth. So I was kind of always doing that, but I was also always drawing. So I did take a lot of English and literature classes in college, but I majored in drawing because it was just easier. It's like, you don't even think about it. And I'm glad I did, because if I had majored in English, I don't know that I would have wanted to write, because I would have been so sick of seeing books just pulled apart, and dissected. Yeah. And it was kind of annoying enough, not even being an English major, but so many times I wanted to just say, look, can it just be a fun story? Can you just enjoy it? Do you have to rip every single thing apart? So I got enough of that in drawing that by the time I graduated with a degree in drawing, it's like, I don't ever want to pick up a pencil ever again. And it took me years before I actually got back to drawing with my degree.
Yeah.
So, but I did always sort of, I've submitted things. I got some stuff published in a school paper. I submitted to like the Science Fiction Writers of America or whatever that was. So I would write things and submit them, and didn't get accepted, which was just as well, because I wasn't putting in a whole lot of time practicing. And when I did take writing classes, I didn't get any helpful critique or feedback, because the instructors were like, "Oh, that's great. You know how to write. Now we'll go focus on these people who need help." And I was like, "Oh, I guess I'm great. I don't need any help." But of course, you still do need to keep practicing, and you should get critiques and feedback and so forth. But it was hard to find anybody that could help me, because being at home raising my kids, I wasn't also out there trying to do a writing career. I was focusing on my kids.
Yeah.
But still writing down ideas for when I had time. So, and then I did diddle around with these two, the storyline of those two. And I did get some feedback that was very helpful, and a lot of encouragement from people. So when I did finally have the time, my kids were old enough, the house was calm enough and quiet enough that I could revisit this. That was in 2019. And I was getting really excited about the prospect of either, finding a publisher or self-publishing. I had all these options. It was all out there. So yeah, I was starting to take it seriously in about 2019.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to try my hand as a writer while I was in the Navy. I got into Dungeons and Dragons. I just started making a whole bunch of characters and like worlds and stuff. I was like, oh, maybe I'll give this a try. And so I got out of the Navy and I started going to school on my GI Bill at Portland State.
Oh, I went to Portland State too.
Yeah, that's where my wife got her undergrad there, and she got her PA degree at UC Davis.
Oh,
But yeah,
that's where I met my husband. Was at Portland State.
nice. We met. We didn't meet there, but we were both going to PCC when we met, and then she transferred to Portland State, and then I went much later than she did because I went through the Navy and all that, and then got out, and then went to school. But I went as an English major, and I don't recommend it if you are wanting to be a writer, unless you just want to go get an English degree. For I don't know, I found it to be much more beneficial to just read a ton and then talk to
Yep.
people like yourself, and then write. I listen to podcasts
Exactly.
because I don't know how many of the professors are actually published writers. I'm
I think that a lot of them are kind of, I don't know, this sounds catty, maybe failed writers. I mean,
yeah.
they probably all thought, hey, I'm going to be getting the next Nobel Prize. I've got these great ideas. And they're just rehashes of other things that they're popular when they were in school, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, kind of Philip Roth type stuff or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely I listen to the Writers Dojo podcast with Larry Curry and Steve Diamond. That's a good one that I really like. And then like Facebook groups with other writers in it. I'm not published yet, but I'm working at it. I'm editing one right now, a short story.
Good.
But I'm just saying, I get like school. For me, it was a big letdown. Like I felt like I was spending way more time on classes that I didn't care about that weren't writing, and the writing classes I kind of phoned it in because I knew I could get an easy grade, an easy A. So I just did what I needed to do for writing to pass and put my other attention to classes I didn't care about. Really didn't like that. And I don't know. The professors are very snooty. They kind of look down on genre fiction. It's all literary fiction.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. I wasn't a fan.
Yeah,
So,
it's the same thing in the art department. They didn't, I mean, they knew that I was very skilled, and they were happy that I would get work done in time and I would do the assignments, and you would usually have a good rapport with the drawing teacher, most of them, but it was still all about, well, your stuff's kind of, you know, delicate and pretty and representative and where we all know the real art should be kind of big and ugly and snarky. Everything has to be kind of snarky and smug. You can't do anything that's sincere. And I saw that right away, and it didn't affect. I still did the kind of art I wanted, and I wrote the kind of stories I wanted. But I can see where other people might just be, you know, worn down by that.
Yeah. And
give up.
There was another aspect of it too, where it was like they were so focused on like their social commentary. So they picked all these authors that were either, you know, immigrants or whatever, some marginalized class that were also authors, and that they had something to say about American society through their lens. And it was usually always negative. And we had to kind of treat it like it was the gospel truth because that was their experience. It was very, very tiring for me. And I, because of COVID, I didn't end up finishing because they wouldn't let me. I couldn't even take remote classes without a vaccine, so I stopped going there.
You're kidding! Oh my gosh!
No,
I graduated back in '93, so it was bad, but it wasn't that bad. Woo!
Yeah, even from my wife graduated in 2012, and I started going in 2019, and I would come home and tell her some of the things that made me do, and she was like, "What?" And then I looked into it, and I realized I saw that they ramped up and like revamped their curriculum in 2016. I was like, "Oh, okay, I understand." Like, what happened in 2016 that probably made all the liberals lose their mind. That makes sense. I was like, okay. Got a few things here in the chat. Okay, Hammertron Action Figures asks, are you a discovery writer or an outliner?
Oh, okay. My first couple of projects, I would say, were more discovery, although I had a few key scenes, like especially towards the end, but I wasn't quite sure how to get there. Now, when you do that, it can be fun, but it also means you kind of have to undo a lot of stuff when you find things that don't work.
Yeah.
Or, especially when you're doing a series, you do have to actually plan ahead if you want things to fit together and make sense, right, George R.R. Martin?
Burn.
Yeah. So I have become more of an outliner, although I like to leave plenty of wiggle room for in case there's some pleasant surprises along the way.
Yeah. I feel like in George's defense, I feel like maybe he does know the ending, and what we saw on HBO was his ending, and he's like, well, nobody liked that, so now what am I going to do?
Well, there could be.
Yeah. Let's see here. Herman P. Hunter asks, are you attending BasedCon this year?
I am.
Where is that? Is
I
that
have my
in Tennessee?
tickets.
Is that where that's at?
No, it's in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Oh, okay. What month is that usually in? Or I guess
It's the first weekend in September.
BasedCon. I don't think I've ever been to Michigan.
Last year was the first time I've been, and I had a blast. It was really fun, and I believe that Herman and I were on a panel together about religion and world building.
Oh, that'd be cool. I've never been to a con where there was like writer panel. Is that like, does every con have that, or are they certain cons? Like, are they specific? Is BasedCon a writing con?
I assume that they'd have it. I mean, like Comic Cons, they have panels with people.
I mean, do you ever go to the one in Portland? Do you ever go to that one?
The Rose
City.
FanCon.
FanCon, I think, is the recent one they just.
Well, they have like one every weekend.
Yeah.
It's right. The convention center is like right by our church, and so Sunday, a lot of times we'll be driving back from church, and we're like, "What are all these? Oh yeah, there's another con this weekend."
I gotta say, I went there and I was like, I forgot to put deodorant on. I was like, oh man, this is gonna suck. And I was like, okay, well, I got there and I was like, I kind of fit in, or maybe I might be the best smelling person here.
Oh my goodness!
I was all worried about it.
Well, I'm on the Rose City Con mailing list because I was thinking about being a vendor there and selling books. But two things: it was very much rainbow oriented, and you had to wear masks or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's the same weekend as BasedCon, so I'd much rather be at BasedCon.
Yeah. Yeah, I went by myself because I didn't have anyone else to go with, and my wife is super not into the same things as far as that goes as I am. But my goodness, I was I really I felt very out of place. Even like I'm a nerd, like I like nerdy things, but I was like I don't know what to do here. Like there was like this I don't know, it wasn't a stage, but people were going up, and like it was these kids with like little like anime fox furry tails, and they were like dressed up as anime characters, and they were like dancing to anime, like so there's like the whole crowd watching them and like cheering them on, and they were doing like really like over the top like kind of cheesy anime dances, and I was like, oh, good. I don't want to shame anybody for doing what they love and what gives them a good time. But I was like, that is weird, and
Yeah.
Let's see here. John A. Douglas dropping a like this evening. Good to see you, dude. Herman P. Hunter again. Literary fiction is for fart sniffers. I couldn't agree more. For the most part, I mean, there's a few literary books that I do like. I mean, honestly, there were a few books in college I was surprised. Like, oh, this was actually really good. One was The Promise. I don't know. It's about like this Jewish kid in the 50s or 60s, like whenever McCarthyism was, and yeah, it was. I was like, this is not going to be interesting. This guy's like studying to become a rabbi. It was really interesting and really good, in my opinion. A couple other ones.
Well, I just like a well-written story, and I don't read a lot of modern stuff unless it's indie or self-published, frankly, because I feel like I can kind of trust it more to tell a better story. But I have run across some most recent book, recently published mainstream book I read was called Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I love that, but she's very unusual. She's a fantasy writer, but she's very unusual. So it was very unusual. Another one that I read, which is, I guess it's 20 years old now, new to me, was The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. Have you read that?
I haven't heard of that one.
It's really good. I think it did win it won like the Pulitzer or something. It's fictional account of two boys in New York. One he's Czech and he's Jewish and he's escaped from the Nazis, and they're in New York and they get into comic books and designing they invent a character. They have their publisher. They're going to be rich and famous, and they do. So it's kind of based on some real life stories of Bob Kane and Stan Lee and all those. but these are fictionalized guys, and it is hilarious, and it is full of history, but it's fascinating. You really feel like you're there at the time with these weird, quirky personalities. They're all artists, and it's nice and thick. It's really good, and it's like, okay, so there is some. You can still get some mainstream people are writing some good stories, but like I said, this is about 20 years old.
Yeah, probably before the dip into shredding art for preaching.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, there was some stuff in it that I'm thinking, I wonder if he were to rewriting this now, would he have said that? Would he have been allowed to say that or write that way?
I mean, I don't know what his leanings are, but if he's left of center, I'm going to say no. Like, you think of, like, people that were in The Office, right? Like, Mindy Kaling's like, we couldn't make that show today. I'm like, you could, and people would love it, but you just don't want to. But speaking of Bob Kane, have you watched? It's on Hulu, and there's a book called Batman and Bill, I think. But there's I think the Hulu show is also called Batman and Bill. But basically, he's talking about how, like, Bob Kane kind of stole all the credit for Batman from Bill Finger, who I guess now his name is actually on, like, as a co-credit creator.
I've heard of that scandal, yeah, but I haven't seen the show.
It's kind of heartbreaking, honestly, but also incredible as far as the amount of research that journalist did to uncover this truth and essentially get Bill Finger. It's because this one guy decided to go digging for like some contract back in the 30s. He managed to get that guy's name as credit. Now, I think the first time his name showed up as a creator, as co-credit or whatever, was the Batman vs Superman movie with Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck. It was like 2017.
Oh, okay.
And he was dead, but that's the first time his name ever showed up as getting credit for Batman. So that great movie. I definitely recommend it.
All right, I'll put it on the list.
I hope it's still on Hulu. I don't know why it wouldn't be. Let's see here. I think you got to mention a few. Do you have any other like book influences that you want to give a shout out to that kind of crafted who you are as a writer?
Oh, okay. Well, this is going to be kind of embarrassing, I guess. I don't know. It's just me. I read a lot of British stuff. So my influences would be like P.D. James for thrillers. She wrote mysteries, but thrillers, but very psychological. And I was influenced by her. I love Graham Greene. I don't know if you've heard of the Third Man, the Orson Welles movie with Joseph Cotton.
Negative.
You probably have. It's pretty.
I mean, I've heard of Orson Welles.
Okay. So Graham Greene, he wrote the screenplay for that. He also wrote The Power and the Glory, which was they did a movie with Henry Fonda. So he was this British Catholic writer who wrote like thrillers, but they were very deep psychologically about good versus evil and people being just dirtbags, but getting a chance to change. So I like Graham Greene. I like Flannery O'Connor, some Agatha Christie, classic British things. I also love the Harry Potter series. Basically anything I've ever read is an influence.
Yeah.
But I try not. It's hard now when I'm reading so many more, current indie authors. It's like, okay, how do I don't want to be inadvertently stealing anything,
Yeah.
So it's good to kind of, in that case, be reading outside of my normal genre.
Uh-oh.
So into my stuff.
I think I'm losing you. You're. I don't know if the chat can still hear you. You're kind of cutting out on me. Oh, there you go.
And movies influence.
Yeah.
Too. It's a different way of telling a story.
Can you still hear me? Hello? Can you still hear me?
You there?
Oh. We lost her. Chat. Can you hear her? Can you hear me? Can you hear anybody? Hello?
Hello? What happened?
I don't know. You started at least on my side. You started getting like very glitchy, and then you couldn't hear me,
Huh.
and then you vanished.
I wonder if that means that somebody's running the microwave down in the kitchen because our internet goes out whenever anyone runs the microwave. No, it's true.
Oh man, yeah, I don't know because on Monday, towards the end of the stream, I saw in the chat people were saying that it was buffering a lot, like the whole stream was. So I don't know if someone's watching TV while I'm out here streaming, it like slows my stuff down. But I don't want to have to get like a separate,
Well,
Wi-Fi channel.
Rebecca, I had trouble hearing Rebecca. She was breaking up a lot towards the end.
Yeah, I think
But
that might
that
just
would
be her connect.
on her connection, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, the whole thing. I went back and watched it, and like towards the end, the whole everybody was like, it would like stop and then like come back in like several seconds later. Hammertron says the dystopian future is now. Yeah, so I guess it's almost 8 o'clock, so I gotta wrap up in a little bit. But kind of go back to your series. You said it's like cyberpunk. That sounds cool. Cyberpunk. Do they have like cybernetics? You mentioned bioengineering. So is that for people to like get them cool abilities, or is that just for like growing food or whatever?
Bioengineering of like manufacturing people, or at least attempting to, experimenting in that respect. Yes, there's cyborgs. There's cybernetic implants. Not as many as I think people are expecting, because part of the premise is that there's been like a global depression and also kind of some pushback in some areas, so there aren't as many advances in the areas that we assume there's going to be, and that's actually plays into the main plot in that things that we expect the future to look like don't, and there's a lot of dissatisfaction, and then other people are figuring out, well, what can we do to bring about this and also empower our country at the same time, kind of thing. So I know that's really vague, but I don't want to give away anymore.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for coming on. Sorry that we had a little glitch out there right at the end, but at least we made it for the whole hour without too many technical issues.
Well, thank you for having me. This has really been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just have on Amazon just the 5 books. I have your first book linked in the description, but
they're all there. They're all grouped together, and then on my author's page, the collection of short stories is there, which is it's not in this same Beyond Cascadia universe, but if anybody didn't want to commit to an entire novel, this is a nice little sample of some of my writing. That some of the stories are kind of dark, very dark.
I don't mind that. I like a good dark story. Sometimes it can be quite cozy. Alrighty, well, thanks so much for coming on, and I guess I'll probably see you Monday night.
Yeah, I believe so.
Alrighty, see you later, Hammertron.
Good night.
See you guys. Have a good night.
Night.